The sweet scent of freshly cut grass filled the air as kids played on their front lawns, their laughter echoing through the peaceful suburban streets. It was one of those perfect summer days when the sun hung high in the cloudless sky, warming everything it touched without being too hot. Among the children was a bright-eyed 11-year-old girl who lived in the blue house on the corner of Maple Street. She was hopping across colorful chalk squares drawn on the sidewalk, her dark ponytail bouncing with each jump, completely absorbed in her game of hopscotch. Her friends had drawn an elaborate course that stretched nearly half the length of the sidewalk, and they'd spent the better part of the morning perfecting their throws and hops. What made this particular girl special wasn't just her skill at hopscotch, though she was quite good at it. It was her remarkable ability to notice things that others might overlook. While other kids her age rushed through their days in a blur of activity, she had always been different. She would notice how the neighbor's cat would hide under the same bush every afternoon, how the mail carrier always hummed the same tune while delivering letters, and how the crossing guard wore a different colored scarf each day of the week. Her teachers often praised her attention to detail during art class, and her mom would joke that nothing in the house could be moved without her noticing. Even the smallest changes caught her eye, like when someone rearranged the magnetic letters on the refrigerator or switched the positions of the throw pillows on the couch. On this particular summer afternoon, she was teaching her best friend a new way to play hopscotch, one that her grandmother had taught her. Instead of simply hopping through the numbers, players had to sing a special rhyme that made the game more challenging and fun. The girls were giggling as they stumbled over the words, trying to keep their balance while hopping on one foot. The neighborhood around them was alive with the sounds of summer. A sprinkler whirred rhythmically on someone's lawn, creating tiny rainbows in the mist. Dogs barked in the distance, and the gentle rustling of leaves in the breeze provided a peaceful backdrop to their play. Several houses down, someone was mowing their lawn, adding to the symphony of suburban sounds. Younger kids rode their bikes up and down the sidewalk, training wheels clattering against the concrete. A group of boys kicked a soccer ball around in a nearby yard, shouting encouragement to each other. Parents sat on front porches, chatting and keeping watchful eyes on their children while enjoying the pleasant weather. It was exactly the kind of day that would later be remembered as a perfect snapshot of summer childhood. Right up until the moment when the familiar melody of an ice cream truck began to drift through the air. The cheerful tune floated on the breeze, growing louder with each passing second. Like magic, the sound seemed to pause all other activity on the street. Kids stopped their games, heads turning to locate the source of the music. Nobody else noticed anything unusual about the approaching ice cream truck. To them, it was just another exciting part of a summer day, a chance to get their favorite frozen treats. But as the white truck slowly rounded the corner, the observant girl felt something different in the air. Something that made her pause mid-hop, her foot hovering over the chalk square marked with the number 7. Looking back, this moment would be remembered as the exact point when an ordinary summer day transformed into something else entirely, when a simple game of hopscotch gave way to events that would change their neighborhood forever. Little did anyone know that this young girl's unique gift for noticing details was about to prove more valuable than anyone could have imagined. The ice cream truck's cheerful jingle grew louder as it rolled down the street, and kids from every house began running toward it with dollar bills clutched in their hands. But our young observer stayed where she was, her feet still planted on the hopscotch court. Something about this scene wasn't quite right, and she could feel it in her gut. Usually, it was Mr. Wilson who drove their neighborhood ice cream truck. Everyone knew him, the friendly older man with salt and pepper hair who remembered every child's favorite ice cream and always had a kind word to share. He'd been serving ice cream in their neighborhood for so long that he even served some of the parents when they were kids. But today, the person behind the wheel was someone else entirely. The new driver kept fidgeting in his seat, his eyes darting back and forth like he was watching for something. He wore a baseball cap pulled low over his face, which seemed odd on such a sunny day. Every few seconds, he would look over his shoulder, even though there was nothing behind him except more excited kids running toward the truck. As she watched, more details jumped out at her. The truck itself looked similar to Mr. Wilson's, but something was different. The usual bright, colorful stickers of ice cream treats seemed newer, almost like they'd been recently stuck on. And there was something strange about the license plate. A piece of dark tape partially covered it, making some of the numbers impossible to read. The line of children grew longer, with kids chattering excitedly about which treats they wanted to buy. A group of younger children from the house next door bounced up and down, counting their coins and discussing whether they had enough for the fancy ice cream bars with the chocolate coating. Nobody else seemed to notice anything unusual. Our young observer took a few steps closer, pretending to be interested in buying ice cream herself. She could hear the driver's voice now, quick and sharp, nothing like Mr. Wilson's warm, friendly tone. He wasn't making the usual small talk with the kids or asking them about their summer adventures. Instead, he barely spoke at all, just nodded and handed out ice creams with hands that seemed to shake slightly. The price list taped to the side of the truck was different too. Mr. Wilson's prices were always neatly printed on a laminated card, but this one was hastily written in marker, with some prices crossed out and rewritten. It was the kind of detail that most people would miss, but it made her stomach feel funny. She watched as a little boy from down the street bought a popsicle. The driver fumbled with the change, dropping coins on the floor of his truck. His hands were sweaty. She could see them glistening in the sunlight. That's when she noticed another strange thing. There was no name tag on his shirt. Mr. Wilson always wore one, proud to show he worked for Happy Day Ice Cream Company. More and more kids were gathering around the truck now. Some parents stood chatting on their front lawns, probably glad for the distraction that would keep their children entertained for a while. But our observer felt a growing sense of unease. Everything about this situation felt wrong, like when you put on a shoe and immediately know there's a pebble inside. She thought about the safety assemblies at school, where police officers talked about trusting your instincts. They'd said that sometimes your brain notices things that seem wrong before you can even explain why they're wrong. That's exactly how she felt right now, like all these little details were adding up to one big warning sign. The driver's eyes met hers for a brief moment, and she quickly looked away. In that split second, she saw something in his expression that made her heart beat faster. It wasn't the kind, friendly look she was used to seeing from adults who worked with children. It was something else, something that made her take a step backward, away from the growing crowd of kids. She knew she had to do something. But what? She looked around at all the excited faces of her friends and neighbors, then back at the mysterious ice cream truck driver. This wasn't the time to ignore her instincts, not when something felt so obviously wrong. Standing there on the sun-warmed sidewalk, our young hero felt like time had slowed down. The cheerful music from the ice cream truck seemed to fade into the background as she remembered all the important lessons she'd learned about staying safe. Her mom always told her that funny feeling in your stomach when something's not right isn't just butterflies. It's your brain trying to tell you something important. Just last month at school, they'd had a special assembly about safety. The police officer who spoke to them didn't just talk about stranger danger. She talked about how kids are actually really good at spotting when things aren't quite right. Your instincts are like your own personal alarm system, the officer had said. When something feels wrong, it's okay to step back and tell a grown-up you trust. Those words echoed in her mind now as she watched the scene unfold before her. The suspicious driver was still acting strangely, his movements jerky and uncertain as he handed out ice creams to the growing line of kids. She noticed how he kept glancing at his phone, then at the street signs, like someone who wasn't familiar with the area at all. She thought about Mr. Wilson, the regular ice cream man, and all the little things he did that made everyone feel safe. He always parked in the same spots, knew all the kids' names, and even remembered who had allergies. This new driver didn't seem to care about any of that. He barely looked at the children's faces and kept mixing up the prices of different ice creams. The tape over the license plate bothered her more and more. Her dad, who loved cars, had taught her that license plates were like names for vehicles. They helped identify them if something went wrong. Why would someone want to hide that unless they were trying to avoid being recognized? She remembered another important lesson from that school assembly. The police officer had told them that sometimes kids worry about seeming silly or making a big deal out of nothing. But it's better to speak up and be wrong, the officer had said, than to stay quiet and wish you'd said something later. Looking around, she saw how everyone else seemed caught up in the excitement of unexpected ice cream on a hot summer day. The younger kids were comparing their colorful popsicles, and even some of the older ones were digging through their pockets for loose change. Nobody else appeared to notice the warning signs that seemed so obvious to her. Her best friend waved from the line, pointing at the menu and mouthing, "Come on." But our observer shook her head slightly. That weird feeling in her stomach had grown stronger. She thought about all the times her parents had praised her for being observant, like when she noticed her little brother was about to fall off the swing, or when she smelled something burning in the kitchen before anyone else did. The driver's hands were shaking more now as he made change for a group of kids. A few coins dropped to the ground, and when he bent to pick them up, she saw something that made her breath catch. A glimpse of what looked like a fake company logo hastily taped to the side of the truck. The real ice cream company's logo she'd seen so many times on Mr. Wilson's truck was slightly different. She took a deep breath and squared her shoulders. Sometimes being brave doesn't mean doing something big and dramatic. Sometimes it means being the one person willing to step back and say, "Wait a minute." Her teachers always said she had good judgment, and right now, her judgment was telling her this situation needed adult attention. The ice cream truck's music seemed to get louder, almost like it was trying to drown out her thoughts. But she had made up her mind. All these little details added up to something that didn't feel right, and she knew exactly what she needed to do next. Her mom always said that being brave isn't about not feeling scared. It's about doing the right thing even when you are scared. She took one last look at the scene, the covered license plate, the nervous driver, the hastily applied stickers, and turned toward her house. Sometimes the bravest thing you can do is walk away and get help, even if everyone else thinks you're missing out on the fun. The screen door made its familiar squeak as our young hero slipped into her house, her heart beating fast, but her mind clear. The cool air inside was a stark contrast to the summer heat, but she barely noticed. She could still hear the ice cream truck's melody drifting through the windows as she walked quickly to the kitchen, where her mom was preparing lunch. Her mom looked up from chopping vegetables, probably wondering why her daughter wasn't outside playing with friends on such a beautiful day. But something in her daughter's expression made her put down the knife and give her full attention. That's one thing our young observer loved about her mom. She always knew when something was serious. "Mom," she started, keeping her voice steady despite her racing heart. "There's something weird happening outside." She didn't rush her words or let her nervousness take over. Instead, she remembered how her teachers always said to explain things clearly and in order, just like telling a story. She described everything she'd noticed. The unfamiliar driver, his nervous behavior, the covered license plate. She told her mom about the fake-looking company logo and how different this driver was from Mr. Wilson. As she spoke, she watched her mom's face change from curious to concerned, just like when she told her about the time she saw some older kids bullying a younger one at the park. Her mom didn't interrupt, didn't dismiss her concerns, and didn't tell her she was being silly. Instead, she asked careful questions. How long has the truck been there? Did you notice which direction it came from? How many kids are out there now? Each question helped our young hero remember more details that might be important. The ice cream truck's music continued to play outside, but now it seemed less cheerful and more like a warning signal. Through the kitchen window, they could see more children joining the line, waving dollar bills in the air. Some parents were still chatting on their lawns, completely unaware that anything might be wrong. Her mom reached for her phone, but kept her movements calm and natural. That's something else they'd learned in the safety assembly. When you spot trouble, it's important not to panic or draw attention to yourself. Sometimes the quietest actions are the most powerful ones. "You did exactly the right thing," her mom said softly, giving her a quick hug before starting to type on her phone. Our young hero felt a wave of relief wash over her. Sometimes the hardest part of being brave is wondering if people will believe you when you speak up. She watched as her mom sent a quick message to the neighborhood parents group chat. Her mom was good at this, warning people without causing panic. The message was simple but clear, asking parents to bring their children inside for a quick sunscreen reapplication. It was clever. A normal enough request that wouldn't alarm the kids or tip off the suspicious driver. Next, her mom made another call, speaking in low, clear tones to the police. She repeated all the details her daughter had noticed, adding the exact location and the number of children present. Through the window, they could see some parents already calling their kids back inside, probably having seen the group message. The weight of responsibility felt lighter now that she'd shared it with an adult who could help. But she couldn't help feeling worried about her friends who were still in line for ice cream. Her best friend was still out there, probably wondering why she'd walked away earlier. Her mom must have noticed her anxious glance because she gave her shoulder a gentle squeeze. "You're being brave in the smartest way possible," she said. "Sometimes being a hero means being patient and letting the right help arrive." They stood together by the window, watching as more parents casually gathered their children. The ice cream truck's music played on, but now other adults were starting to take notice of the strange details she'd spotted. In the distance, they could hear the faint sound of sirens, carefully approaching without their usual wailing noise. Our young hero took a deep breath. She'd done what she knew was right, even when it wasn't easy. Now it was time to let the grown-ups handle the rest. The moments that followed felt both incredibly fast and strangely slow at the same time. Our young hero's mom moved through the house with quiet purpose, peeking through different windows to keep an eye on the situation while staying on the phone with the police. Her voice remained calm and steady as she shared more details about what her daughter had noticed. From their living room window, they could see other parents starting to take action. The mom's group chat was working like a silent alarm system. One by one, parents began appearing on their front porches, casually calling their kids in for sunscreen, snacks, or other everyday reasons. It was like watching a carefully choreographed dance where everyone played their part without letting on that anything was wrong. "Can you see the license plate numbers that aren't covered?" her mom asked softly, relaying information to the police. Our young observer squinted through the window, remembering the partial numbers she'd seen earlier. She felt proud that her habit of noticing small details was proving so useful. The suspicious driver seemed to notice something was changing. Through the window, they could see him becoming more agitated as the crowd of children gradually thinned out. He kept checking his phone and looking around, probably wondering why his line of customers was disappearing so quickly. Her mom had moved on to sending more detailed messages to the neighbors, especially those who hadn't seen the first alert. She was careful with her words, making sure not to cause panic, but being clear enough that everyone understood the urgency. Remember that safety talk from the school assembly? Some parents were saying to their children, gently but firmly guiding them away from the truck. The ice cream truck's cheerful music now seemed out of place in the increasingly tense atmosphere. Our young hero watched as her best friend's dad smoothly walked over to the truck line, pretending to check the prices while quietly observing the driver. He was a police officer too, though not in uniform today, and she could tell he was taking mental notes just like she had. More parents were finding casual ways to position themselves between the truck and any remaining children. A neighbor who worked as a school crossing guard had also noticed something was off and started directing kids to head home, using her familiar authoritative but friendly tone that kids naturally obeyed. Through it all, our young observer and her mom kept watching, ready to share any new information with the police who were quietly approaching the neighborhood. Her mom had explained that the police were being careful not to use sirens or rush in with flashing lights, which might scare the driver into doing something dangerous. "You know what I'm most proud of?" her mom whispered, giving her a side hug as they waited. "Not just that you noticed something wrong, but that you knew exactly what to do about it. That's real bravery, knowing when to ask for help." The whole scene was like a lesson in how a community could work together when everyone played their part. The parents who received the warning messages didn't question or doubt. They just acted, protecting not only their own kids, but everyone's children. It showed how one person speaking up could set off a chain reaction of people helping each other. Her mom's phone buzzed with updates from neighbors and responses from the police. Each message added another piece to the puzzle, confirming that our young hero's instincts had been right. The covered license plate, the nervous behavior, the unfamiliar driver. All of it meant something important. They could see police cars positioning themselves quietly at both ends of the street now, their lights off but their presence reassuring. The officers were being careful not to startle anyone or create chaos. This was exactly what they'd learned about in school, how sometimes the bravest actions are the quiet, careful ones. Our young observer felt a mix of emotions as she watched everything unfold. She was still a bit nervous, but mostly she felt relieved that she'd spoken up. Her mom had always told her that being brave doesn't mean you're not scared. It means you do the right thing anyway. The police officers moved with incredible skill and care, like they'd practiced this exact situation 100 times before. 2 police cars had quietly parked at opposite ends of the street, and now officers were calmly walking toward the ice cream truck, looking just like regular parents out for a stroll in the summer sun. Through the window, our young hero could see everything clearly. The remaining kids had almost all gone inside now, thanks to the quick thinking of parents and neighbors. The suspicious driver was starting to close his serving window, probably sensing that something wasn't quite right. His movements were becoming more rushed and jerky, like someone who knew they needed to leave in a hurry. One of the police officers, a friendly-looking woman with her hair tied back in a neat bun, approached the truck as if she wanted to buy an ice cream. She smiled and chatted naturally, pointing at the menu while her partner quietly moved around to the other side. It was amazing to watch how calm they stayed, making sure not to frighten anyone who might still be nearby. The driver didn't realize what was happening until it was too late to run. When he finally noticed the officers, his face changed completely. He tried to jump into the driver's seat, but the police were already there, blocking his escape routes. They moved quickly but carefully, like dancers who knew all the right steps. Our young observer watched in amazement as the officers talked to the driver through his window. Their voices were firm but not angry, and their movements were smooth and professional. They didn't need to shout or chase anyone. They just did their jobs with quiet confidence. From her safe spot inside the house, she could see other officers checking the truck thoroughly. One of them carefully peeled back the tape covering the license plate, while another looked through the truck's serving window with a flashlight. They took lots of pictures and wrote things down in their notebooks, treating everything like an important clue in a puzzle. The neighborhood had gone quiet now, except for the ice cream truck's music, which was still playing its endless loop of cheerful tunes. It seemed silly now, that happy music playing while something so serious was happening. Finally, one of the officers reached inside the truck and turned it off, and the sudden silence felt like a warm blanket of safety settling over the street. Parents started coming outside again, gathering in small groups to talk about what had happened. Some of them looked toward our young hero's house, and she could see them nodding approvingly. Her mom had quietly let a few neighbors know who had first spotted the problem, and now their grateful smiles made her feel both proud and a little shy. The police were still working with careful attention to detail. They brought out special bags to collect evidence and took more pictures of the truck from every angle. One officer was making a phone call, probably to the real ice cream company, to ask about their missing truck. Another was talking to parents, taking down their statements about what they'd seen. Through it all, Our young observer noticed how the police kept the situation calm and controlled. There was no shouting, no drama, no scary scenes like in TV shows. Just trained professionals doing their jobs carefully and thoroughly. It was actually pretty interesting to watch, like seeing a well-practiced team work together. Her mom had started making lemonade for the officers and neighbors who were helping out. Sometimes the best way to help is to take care of the helpers, she explained, squeezing lemons into a pitcher. The simple, normal action of making lemonade seemed to help everyone feel a bit more relaxed. The afternoon sun was starting to soften into early evening light, casting long shadows across the street. The police were finishing up their work, their movements still precise and professional. Our young hero felt tired suddenly, like all the excitement of the day was catching up with her at once. But it was a good kind of tired, the kind that comes from knowing you did something important and right. As the summer evening settled in, the truth about the ice cream truck began to unfold like pages in a storybook. The police officers gathered all the parents in the community center just down the street, while the kids played safely in the supervised playground area nearby. The leading police officer, a kind-faced woman with glasses, stood up to explain what they had discovered. The ice cream truck, it turned out, had been stolen 2 days ago from the real ice cream company in a city about 40 miles away. The company had reported it missing right away, but the thief had been clever about staying away from main roads and keeping to quiet neighborhoods. Our young observer's attention to detail had finally caught up with him. The company owner himself showed up, still wearing his ice cream shop apron. He looked both worried and relieved as he told everyone about his missing truck and his concern for the children's safety. "We always make sure our drivers go through careful background checks," he explained, "and they wear proper uniforms with name tags. This person broke all our safety rules." While the grown-ups talked, our young hero sat with her friends on the playground, feeling a bit overwhelmed by everything that had happened. Her best friend gave her a tight hug and whispered, "I thought you were just being weird when you walked away, but you were being super smart." Other kids gathered around, wanting to hear how she had noticed all the little details that didn't add up. Back inside the community center, the police officer was explaining how the suspicious driver had a history of similar attempts in other towns. He would steal delivery vehicles, not just ice cream trucks, and try to use them to get close to people's homes and businesses. Thanks to our observer's quick thinking, they had stopped him before he could cause any real harm. The real ice cream company owner walked over to where the kids were playing and made an announcement that brought smiles to everyone's faces. To thank the community for their help, he would send Mr. Wilson, their regular ice cream man, to the neighborhood the next day with free ice cream for all the kids. But more importantly, he wanted to use this as a chance to teach everyone about safety. "Tomorrow," he said with a warm smile, "Mr. Wilson will show all the kids the special safety features on our real trucks. He'll explain how to spot official ice cream vendors and what to look out for. Because being safe doesn't mean you can't have fun. It just means being smart about it." Parents were talking about how proud they were of their community. Not just of our young observer, but of how everyone had worked together. The parents who spread the warning message, the neighbors who helped get kids inside, and even the kids themselves who listened to the adults without making a fuss. The police officers started packing up their things, but not before congratulating our young hero. "Your eyes spotted what our patrol cars missed," one officer said kindly. "You showed us that sometimes the best police helpers are the people who live in a neighborhood and know when something's not quite right." As families started heading home, there was a feeling of relief mixed with pride in the air. Kids were already talking about what they'd learned, about trusting their instincts, speaking up when things seem wrong, and how being observant isn't about being nosy. It's about being smart and caring about your community. The summer evening was cooling down now, bringing with it the first chirps of crickets. Porch lights were coming on up and down the street, making everything feel safe and normal again. Our young hero walked home between her parents, feeling tired but good. She had learned something important today, too. that sometimes the bravest thing you can do is simply pay attention and speak up. At home, as she got ready for bed, she could hear her parents telling her grandparents the whole story over the phone. They sounded proud, but not surprised. "She's always been our little detective," she heard her dad say, "always noticing the little things that matter." And he was right. Those little things had mattered more than anyone could have guessed. A week after the ice cream truck incident, the community gathered in the local elementary school gymnasium. Colorful banners hung from the ceiling, and rows of folding chairs filled the room. The space buzzed with excitement as families filed in, many stopping to pat our young hero on the shoulder or give her encouraging smiles. The police chief stood at the podium, his badge gleaming under the gymnasium lights. He wasn't wearing his formal uniform today, just a regular police shirt and pants, which made everything feel more friendly and relaxed. Today, he began, his voice warm and sincere. "We're here to talk about something very important: the power of paying attention." Our young observer sat in the front row between her parents, feeling a mix of shy and proud. She wasn't used to being the center of attention, but everyone had been so kind about it. Her classmates treated her like a mini celebrity, though she kept telling them she'd just done what anyone should do. The police chief told the story of that day, but in a way that made it sound like an exciting lesson rather than a scary event. He explained how one person's careful observation had protected an entire neighborhood. "Sometimes," he said, "the biggest heroes are the ones who simply take time to notice when things aren't quite right." A local news crew stood quietly in the corner, filming for the evening news. They'd asked to interview our young hero earlier, but only if she felt comfortable. She'd agreed, thinking it might help other kids learn to trust their instincts too. The reporter had been nice, asking simple questions and letting her explain things in her own words. The school principal stepped up next, announcing that they would be starting a new safety awareness program. "We'll be teaching all our students about the importance of observation and trusting their instincts," she explained. "And who better to help us design this program than someone who showed us exactly how it should work?" Our young hero couldn't help but smile when she heard that. She'd already started thinking about all the things she could share, not just about spotting dangerous situations, but about how paying attention to small details could help in everyday life too. Parents started sharing their own stories of how their kids had been inspired. One mother told how her daughter now kept a special notebook to write down things she noticed during her day. Another parent mentioned how his son had spotted a loose chain on the playground swing and told the teacher right away. The ceremony reached its high point when the police chief presented a special award, the Young Hero Award for Community Safety. It wasn't just a certificate. It was a beautiful glass plaque with words etched into it about courage and awareness. But what made it really special was that they'd asked our young observer to help design a new safety mascot for the school: a wise owl with sharp eyes and a friendly smile. After the ceremony, there was a small celebration with cookies and lemonade. Kids gathered around to ask questions, not about the scary parts, but about how to be more observant in their daily lives. Our young hero found herself explaining how she noticed patterns, remembered details, and most importantly, wasn't afraid to speak up when something seemed wrong. Local business owners had come too, and they talked about starting a community watch program. "Sometimes it takes a child to remind us adults what's really important," said the owner of the corner bookstore. "Being aware of our surroundings isn't about being suspicious. It's about being responsible for each other." As the evening wound down, the gymnasium slowly emptied, but the feeling of community stayed strong. Parents exchanged phone numbers, planning to set up safety groups. Kids talked excitedly about joining the new awareness program at school. Even the teenagers, who usually tried to act cool about everything, seemed impressed and interested. Our young hero's mom caught her looking thoughtfully at her award. "You know what's really special about today?" she asked softly. "It's not just about recognizing what you did. It's about how you helped everyone realize we all have the power to make our communities safer, just by paying attention and caring about each other." 6 months after the ice cream truck incident, The neighborhood had changed in wonderful ways that nobody could have predicted. The story of our young observers' quick thinking had sparked something special in the community, creating positive changes that kept spreading like ripples in a pond. The school's new safety awareness program, nicknamed Sharp Eyes, Kind Hearts, had become incredibly popular. Every Tuesday and Thursday, students gathered to learn about being observant in fun, creative ways. They played memory games, did scavenger hunts that taught them to notice details, and learned how to trust their instincts while staying calm. Our young hero helped design some of the activities herself. Her favorite was the What's Different game, where students had to spot subtle changes in their classroom or playground. She loved seeing younger kids get excited when they noticed something new, their faces lighting up with pride when they spotted important details. The local police department had started visiting schools all over the city, sharing the story as a real-life example of how kids could make a difference. They didn't focus on the scary parts, but instead talked about the power of paying attention and speaking up. Officers would often say, "Remember, being brave doesn't always mean doing something big. Sometimes it's just about noticing the little things that matter." The neighborhood had created a special safety network that worked better than anyone expected. Parents set up a system where kids could easily identify safe houses to go to if they ever felt uncomfortable. These houses had special owl stickers in their windows, a friendly reminder that there were always people ready to help. Mr. Wilson, the real ice cream truck driver, had become an enthusiastic supporter of community safety. He helped create a program teaching kids how to identify official vendors and what safety features to look for. He even added a special board to his truck where he posted daily safety tips along with the ice cream prices. The local news had done a follow-up story about how one observant child had inspired an entire city to become more aware and protective of its community. Other neighborhoods started copying the safety program, adding their own creative ideas. Some areas created safety walks where families would explore their neighborhoods together, learning to spot both problems and positive things. Our young hero's school project about community awareness had won first place in the district science fair. She had documented how people became more observant after the safety program started, tracking things like how quickly broken playground equipment got reported and fixed, or how many people noticed and helped when someone dropped their books in the hallway. But the best changes were the simple, everyday ones. Kids looked out for each other more. Neighbors talked more often, sharing observations about their community. Even the grumpy old man who used to complain about noisy children had started keeping an eye out for kids' safety, eventually becoming one of the most reliable members of the neighborhood watch. The corner store owner started a junior observer program where kids could earn small rewards for reporting things that needed attention, like a broken streetlight or a dangerous sidewalk crack. It wasn't about being tattletales, it was about caring enough to notice when something needed fixing. One particularly touching moment came when a new family moved into the neighborhood. Their shy daughter had felt nervous about making friends, but other kids quickly included her in their safety awareness activities. Within weeks, she had spotted a wobbly fence at the park that needed fixing, preventing any possible accidents. As summer approached again, the community planned a special celebration. A safety awareness fair with games, demonstrations, and activities, all focused on being observant and helpful. Our young hero would help run a booth teaching other kids about trusting their instincts and speaking up when something seemed wrong. Looking back, that scary day with the suspicious ice cream truck had turned into something amazing. It wasn't just about stopping one bad thing from happening. It was about starting hundreds of good things. The neighborhood had become a place where everyone, from the youngest child to the oldest grandparent, knew they had the power to make a difference just by paying attention and caring. Every time our young observer walked past the community center and saw the owl mascot she'd helped design, she smiled, knowing that being brave enough to speak up that one summer day had created positive changes that would last for years to come.